What if the most dangerous thing in our solar system is also the reason you're alive? New solar missions are showing the sun in terrifying detail, and the deeper we look, the less this star feels familiar. So, what's really happening inside it, and how much of it still don't we understand? It's time we took a look inside the sun. Chapter 1, the sun just got way more personal. Most of us grow up thinking the sun is simple. Big glowing ball, very hot, don't look directly at it, move on. But recent years have been kind of rude to that idea. The more data scientists pull from missions like the Solar Dynamics Observatory, Parker Solar Probe, and giant solar telescopes on Earth, the less the sun looks like a peaceful lamp in the sky, and the more it looks like a living engine with a temper. And that matters because this thing is not just sitting there looking pretty. It runs your weather, your daylight, your seasons, your food chain, your entire biosphere. It also has the power to mess with satellites, GPS, radio systems, aviation, power grids, and basically every layer of modern life that depends on electronics behaving normally. So when scientists say solar cycle 25 turned out stronger than early forecasts expected, that is not just cool astronomy trivia. That is your civilization paying attention to the giant plasma machine in the middle of the solar system. That's why looking inside the sun hits different now. This isn't just a tour of something far away. This is you trying to understand the star that made your world possible and could absolutely ruin your week from 150 million kilometers away. So where do we even start? Not at the center. That's the weird part. If you want to understand the sun, you have to begin with the outside, because the outside is the only part we can actually see. Chapter 2, the crown that makes no sense. The first thing you run into is the corona, the sun's outer atmosphere, the giant glowing crown you can briefly see during a total solar eclipse. From Earth, it looks elegant, almost delicate. In reality, it's huge, unstable, and completely ridiculous. Why ridiculous? Because it's hotter than it should be. The visible surface of the sun sits at about 5,700 Kelvin. That already sounds illegal. But the corona above it can reach around 1 million Kelvin, and in active regions it can push much higher. So somehow the outer atmosphere is vastly hotter than the layer below it. That breaks your intuition immediately. Usually you move away from the heat source and things cool down. Not here. The sun basically looks at normal logic and says no. That mystery is called the coronal heating problem, and scientists have been wrestling with it for decades. One idea says the corona may be heated by countless tiny magnetic explosions called nanoflares, not giant dramatic blasts, just absurd numbers of little ones happening constantly. Another idea points to alpha waves, magnetic waves moving through plasma that may carry energy upward and dump it into the corona. Newer observations have made both ideas more interesting because the plasma up there looks way messier and more tangled than older models expected. And that's one of the biggest themes with the sun. Every time we improve the view, the sun gets more complicated. At 19.3 nanometers in extreme ultraviolet light, scientists can see deep into the corona, and suddenly the star's outer atmosphere lights up with giant loops, holes, hot regions, and magnetic structures you would never guess existed from visible light alone. It's like putting on special glasses and realizing the calm face of the sun was hiding a whole electrical storm. So the corona is not a soft halo, it's a war zone, and just below it, the violence gets a lot more specific. Chapter 3, the sun can throw a punch without ever touching you. The sun does not need to hit Earth like a cannonball to cause damage. That's what makes it scary. When magnetic fields in the sun twist, cross, snap, and reconnect, they can unleash solar flares and coronal mass ejections, and these are not the same thing, even though people mash them together all the time. A solar flare is a burst of electromagnetic radiation. A coronal mass ejection, or CME, is a giant launch of plasma and magnetic field into space. Sometimes they happen together, especially in the nastier events, and the scale is just wild. A single CME can hurl enormous amounts of solar material outward at hundreds to thousands of kilometers per second. These things can start with filaments, giant ribbons of plasma hanging over the sun, then collapse, destabilize, and suddenly the whole structure erupts. What looked like a suspended loop becomes a projectile aimed across the solar system. Now here's the part that should make you sit up a bit straighter. A CME does not have to land on your house to mess up your life. It only has to slam into Earth's magnetic environment hard enough to shake the systems we depend on. Satellites, navigation, communication, power transmission, high-latitude flights, all of it gets dragged into the story. The Carrington event in 1859 was the classic warning shot. Telegraph systems sparked, failed, and even caught fire. Auroras reached shockingly low latitudes. Then in 1989, a geomagnetic storm helped knock out Quebec's power grid in about 90 seconds. That's the sort of thing the sun can do from very far away while still being technically normal, which means the sun is not just a source of warmth, it is also a source of risk. And the reason those risks exist takes us deeper into the sun's atmosphere, where a lot of this chaos begins. Chapter 4, the sun's atmosphere is doing things Earth weather never could. Earth has clouds, rain, wind, storms. The sun has all of that energy turned into nightmare mode. Move inward from the corona and you hit the transition region, a very thin layer where the temperature rises with almost insulting speed. It's like the sun hit a thermal cliff inside its atmosphere. Then below that sits the chromosphere, a lower atmospheric layer that looks calmer from far away than it actually is. This is where you get spicules, those fast, thin jets of plasma that shoot upward like grass in a cosmic hurricane. They form, rise, sway, and vanish in minutes. For a long time, scientists struggled to explain how material this close to the sun could get that kind of upward push. One promising answer involved neutral particles, something earlier models had mostly ignored. Add them in, and suddenly charged particles get the extra buoyancy they need to shoot upward. That's such a sun thing to do. We think we understand the rules, then one overlooked ingredient changes the whole result. Then you get prominences, giant loops of glowing plasma lifted by magnetic fields. These can stretch huge distances into space and hang there looking almost graceful, which is honestly disrespectful considering how violent the environment is. Some last for days, some for much longer, some collapse and help trigger eruptions. And then there's coronal rain, which sounds peaceful until you remember where it's happening. Plasma rises into the corona, gets trapped, cools relative to its surroundings, then falls back down like shining rain. So yes, the sun has weather, it just happens in plasma at temperatures that would erase literally everything you own. By now, the sun no longer feels like a smooth, glowing sphere, right? Good, because we still haven't reached the part you probably think of as its surface. Chapter 5, the surface is not really a surface. The photosphere is what you see when you look at the sun through proper equipment. It's the bright visible layer that feels like the surface, but calling it a surface is kind of a convenience. It is not solid, it is not stable, it is not a crust, it is plasma, a glowing boundary where the sun becomes transparent enough for light to finally escape. And that is where one of my favorite details comes in. The sunlight touching your face did not just blast straight out from the core in a neat line. The photon that finally escaped the photosphere may have spent anywhere from about 10,000 to 170,000 years bouncing through the sun's interior first. Then after all that chaos, it only needs around 8 minutes and 20 seconds to cross space to Earth. So the sun you see is old news twice, a few minutes old in space terms and potentially ancient in terms of the energy's journey through the star itself. At the photosphere, you also start seeing sunspots, darker patches that are only dark because they are cooler than the crazy bright plasma around them. These spots form where strong magnetic fields interfere with convection. And they matter because sunspots often line up with the same active regions that produce flares. So when the sun's face starts looking blotchy, that is not cosmetic, that is magnetic tension showing through. Then there's the granulation pattern, the weird grainy texture covering the photosphere. Those little cells are not image noise, they are the tops of convection cells. Hot plasma rises in brighter centers, spreads, cools, then sinks along darker edges. Each one is massive, each one is temporary, the whole visible sun is basically boiling in front of you, and now we hit the frustrating limit. Because below the photosphere, light stops being a useful guide. If you want to look deeper, you need different tricks. Chapter 6. How do you look inside something you can't see through? This is where solar science gets really clever. We cannot directly image the sun's core with ordinary light. The photosphere is as deep as light lets us go, so instead scientists learn to listen to the sun. Helioseismology is basically star ultrasound. The sun vibrates. Waves ripple through it. The surface rises and falls by tiny amounts, far too small for your eye to catch, but not too small for precise instruments. Those waves travel through different layers, and the way they move tells scientists about temperature, density, rotation, and internal structure. That means the sun has a kind of heartbeat, and we've gotten good at reading it. Using those oscillations, scientists built models of the sun's interior that light alone could never give us. They found deep circulation flows, moving plasma and magnetic fields over very long time scales. They found the tachocline, the thin boundary where the orderly radiative zone below meets the violent convective zone above. That region seems to matter a lot for the solar dynamo, the process that helps generate the sun's magnetic behavior and its 11-year cycle. And there's an even weirder clue coming straight from the core: neutrinos. These tiny particles are made during fusion and barely interact with matter at all. A photon can spend tens of thousands of years stumbling out through the sun. A neutrino just leaves almost instantly. It cuts through the star like the sun is barely there. When scientists measured solar neutrinos and found fewer than expected, it triggered a long scientific drama until they realized neutrinos change type on the way to Earth. Problem solved, and bonus points, it confirmed that our picture of the solar core was basically right. So, no, we cannot open the sun like a box, but we can listen to its vibrations, catch its neutrinos, and reconstruct what is happening below the glare. And what is happening down there is the whole reason any of this exists. Chapter 7, The Core, is where matter starts losing arguments. At the center of the sun, everything gets pushed past ordinary common sense. The core reaches around 15 million degrees Celsius. Pressure there is more than enough to force hydrogen nuclei into ridiculously close encounters. Under normal conditions, protons repel each other because they are both positively charged. They do not want to fuse. Classical physics alone makes the sun look almost impossible. But quantum mechanics shows up and basically says, relax, there's a loophole. That loophole is quantum tunneling. A tiny fraction of protons can effectively get through the repulsion barrier, even without the classical energy to go over it. Once they get close enough, the strong nuclear force takes over and binds them. That starts the proton-proton chain, the main fusion pathway in a star like the sun. Hydrogen becomes helium, and a small bit of mass gets converted into energy. That is the whole game. Every second, the sun turns millions of tons of mass into energy. That energy starts as gamma rays and other products deep in the core, then begins the painfully long outward journey through the radiative zone, where photons get absorbed and re-emitted over and over again, like they are trapped in the worst traffic jam in the universe. Higher up in the convection zone, energy is carried more by bulk motion, hot plasma rising and cooler plasma sinking, and all of this holds the sun up. Gravity is always trying to crush the star inward. Fusion creates outward pressure. As long as those two stay in balance, the sun stays stable. That balance is called hydrostatic equilibrium, and honestly, it might be one of the most beautiful ideas in astronomy. The sun exists as a long argument between collapse and explosion, and right now, neither side has won. But of course, that balance did not just appear out of nowhere. The sun had to be born first. Chapter 8. Before the sun was a star, it was a collapse. Go back about 4.6 billion years, and there is no sun, no earth, no beaches, no phones, no you, just a giant cloud of gas and dust drifting through the Milky Way, seeded with material from older dead stars. Then something disturbed part of that cloud, maybe a shock wave from a nearby stellar explosion. A region collapsed under gravity. It fragmented. One dense clump became the beginning of our sun. As it fell inward, it heated up, became a protostellar core, then a protostar. Material around it flattened into a spinning disk because angular momentum is stubborn like that. That disk would later help produce planets, moons, asteroids, and everything else in the solar system. For millions of years, the young sun kept contracting and heating. Then the core got hot enough for hydrogen fusion to start, and that changed everything. Suddenly, gravity was no longer the only force calling the shots. Outward pressure from fusion pushed back. The sun entered the main sequence phase of its life, which is where it still is today. That's the version of the sun you know. Stable enough to support life, unstable enough to stay interesting. And even this stable phase is not truly constant. The sun has brightened over time. Its inner composition has slowly changed as helium builds up in the core. Its magnetic cycle rises and falls. Its outer atmosphere snaps and surges. It is not a static object. It is an evolving system, which is why future missions matter so much. Because the more we learn, the more the sun stops being background scenery and starts looking like the most important physics lab in our neighborhood. Chapter 9, we still haven't truly reached the deepest part. Parker Solar Probe is the current champion of getting uncomfortably close to the sun. It has flown through the outer atmosphere, through the corona itself, and returned data showing that the boundary between the sun and the solar wind is not some neat, smooth shell. It is uneven, broken, almost mountain-like. The sun's own outflow shapes that boundary in ways we are still trying to understand. That is huge because it means even the outer edge of the sun is more structured than we thought. Parker has also helped show that solar eruptions and the solar wind are not just simple outward streams. They are layered, folded, kinked, and tangled. Magnetic field lines twist, reverse, and buckle. The star is not merely glowing, it is writhing, and yet even with Parker, giant observatories, helioseismology, ultraviolet imaging, and all this modern hardware, the deepest layers still remain out of direct reach. We infer them, we model them, we hear them, we catch their particles, but we do not see them the way we see the photosphere or corona. So yes, we've looked inside the sun, but only partly, which honestly makes this even cooler. Because the story is not finished. Better solar forecasting could help protect technology on Earth. Better models of magnetic activity could improve our understanding of space weather. Better measurements of the corona might finally crack the heating mystery. Future missions may go deeper, listen better, and connect the surface chaos to the buried engine underneath. And then there is the long future. The sun has roughly 5 billion years of core hydrogen burning left before the balance changes for good. One day it will swell into a red giant. Mercury is done. Venus is done. Earth may be also done. After that, the sun will shed its outer layers, leave behind a glowing nebula, and end as a white dwarf. So the star above you is not it is a phase. A very long phase, but still a phase. Chapter 10, what you're really looking at. When you look at the sun, you are not looking at a flat yellow circle. You are looking at a star with a 1,000,000-degree crown that should not be that hot, a surface that boils, a magnetic field that snaps hard enough to threaten technology across a planet, a core where quantum mechanics keeps fusion alive, and a heartbeat we can hear even when light can't show us the truth. You are looking at old light trapped for ages, then suddenly free. You are looking at the reason Earth has warmth, weather, oceans, and biology. You are looking at something that still keeps secrets, and maybe that's the best part. The sun is the closest star in the universe, the most studied by far, and we still cannot fully explain all of it. We still argue about how the corona gets so hot. We still chase the full logic of magnetic storms. We still build faster probes and sharper instruments because even now the sun keeps giving us that same message over and over. You've seen the glow. You haven't seen everything behind it. And that means the next time sunlight hits your face, you're not just feeling warmth. You're feeling the last tiny step of an energy journey that began deep in a stellar core long before humans existed, long before cities, long before history, maybe before your species even looked like itself. That is insane. And it is happening every single day. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more insane stories from outer space.